He'd left the cupboard doors open now to save himself the trouble of checking, but he was sure it would never fill itself again. The magic controlling it, a porter spell that instantly sent objects over long distances, had finally faded and died. Benign fey magic never lasted long here within the Shole. Here, it was malevolent magic that ruled. Crafty shuddered just to think of what lay outside the cellar walls, and then hunger made his stomach rumble. At least there was a fire to keep him warm and fend off a little of the cold and damp. All that remained now were glowing embers, the last of the wood from the beds of his dead brothers. Taking his eyes off the cupboard for a moment, he glanced round at the large wooden bookcase on the other wall. One of the shelves was sagging under the weight of the books that were so precious to him. He'd read them over and over again to keep at bay the tedium of life in the cellar. Although many were gone now, fed to the fire to keep it burning, there were some he couldn't bear to sacrifice. These were the gardening books that had belonged to his mother. A lump came to his throat as he thought of her. She'd been dead for almost a year now, but the pain of her loss was still there. He missed her badly and the happy home she'd made for him and his brothers. But now he had to leave everything behind. He had to leave this refuge. He had to leave it, or starve. Crafty didn't want to go. He wanted to stay here with the memories of his mother and his two dead brothers. Brock and Ben had been twins, 2 years older than him. They had been good to him, looked after him, so it didn't scare him when they whispered to him. Sometimes he would kneel on the earthen floor and place his left ear close to their gravestones, listening carefully, trying to hear what they said. Sometimes he heard them calling his name. "Crafty, Crafty, Crafty," they whispered. Other times they'd weep, and feeling full of pity, he was tempted to raise the stones and release them. But Father had told him never to go too near the graves. Crafty wasn't sure why. He didn't know about the whispering. He told Crafty that he was 13 now, and he must be brave, calm, and dutiful, just like his brothers. They had lived their lives, and now they were resting in the cold earth. Crafty should leave them be. And maybe, he thought, it might not be too bad down there. At least they weren't hungry. They didn't need to leave the safety of the cellar and face the dangers outside it alone. Crafty's thoughts turned back to his father. "I have to go away again," he had said, wrapping his black woolen scarf tightly around his thick neck, buttoning up his greatcoat and tugging on his big boots. Courier Benson had been summoned to the castle once more and had no choice but to obey. Couriers, Crafty knew, were valued members of the castle corpus. "Be brave, Crafty. Let's hope you're still here when I return." His father had said it with a smile, as if he was joking. Whenever there was danger, he usually joked about it. Crafty was still here, and still waiting, but he feared that this time his father wouldn't return in time to save him. His father should have returned long before now. Something must have gone wrong. There was a tiny breeze in the cellar, and Crafty could smell warm candle wax. He'd always liked that smell, but now it worried him. Something worse than hunger would force him out of the cellar, something more insistent than his empty, grumbling belly. The cellar was only safe when it was lit by the magical candles his father had left. There were 3 of them positioned to form a triangle, each impaled on a spike on its own heavy metal stand. The huge candles had burned brightly with barely a flicker, but his father had been away too long, and their benign magic was almost depleted. One by one, they had been going out. Now there was only one still alight, and it had burned very low. If Crafty didn't leave soon, he'd hardly be able to find his way to the door, and once the final candle guttered out, the cellar would no longer be safe. In the fading light, Crafty took a look around the cellar for the last time. It had been home to him, a mostly comfortable refuge, for almost a year. It was time to go. He headed towards the silver alloy stairs that led up from the cellar to the door. Beyond